One of the things that will always be intrinsically intertwined in my life is my love of reading and my love of writing. Hi, my name is Dawn Dalton. I am a freelance writer, an aspiring author, and this year I am working towards self-publishing my first novel, Game On, and I'm taking you along for the ride. I was talking with one of my friends recently, trying to figure out what I wanted to discuss before I do my Q4 plans, and he suggested that I talk about my top 3 books that have inspired me as a writer. Well, if you know me, I have trouble picking just 3 or 4 books. So today I'm going to talk about 5 books that have inspired me as both a reader and a writer, because both of those things are linked in my head. The first book is the book that made me a reader, and that's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And this book is silly. You may know the movie. It's nothing like the movie, other than that there is food weather. This book was the book that every time we'd spend the night at my grandma's house, I would pick out from the library for her to read to me. And finally got to the point where I wanted to be able to read it to myself, which helped me learn how to read better. And I love it because it's also a book that has next to no plot, or at least no character-driven plot. It's all the weather, the circumstances. The book opens with a grandfather telling the story of a place called Chew and Swallow. And then the majority of the book, there are no main characters until you get to the end where the kids are sledding on a snowy day and you see the sun rising over the hill and it might smell like mashed potatoes. And I love it. It's fun, it's cute, it's everything I could have asked for at that age. The second book, as an adult, I thought I dreamed it up. But as a kid, this book scared the hell out of me. And I still picked it up and took it out of the library more often than not. And that's Davy and the Goblin. This is also sort of a spite book for me. It's a retelling of Alice in Wonderland with a male protagonist and a fire-eating goblin instead of a white rabbit. And it goes on this really weird journey through fairy tale characters. And the goblins gave me nightmares as a kid. But it's also the book that made me think, if this book could be published, I can be published. And that has always been a driving factor for me. It's not my super spite book where if this person can be published, I can be published, but it was the first book that made me think that it was possible for me to be published. And I apologize to any publishing house who got my little unicorn notepaper during that time period that said, I want to be a writer and I've never finished a book, but if you give me a publishing contract, I will finish a book for you. I was 8, so I'm sorry. The third book wasn't my first romance novel, but was the one that introduced me to my first book boyfriend, and that was Outlander. And yes, this is such a beautiful copy. This is actually my mom's old copy. And that was sort of the thing with me and my mom, is any book she had on her bookcase, I was more than welcome to read. Not that I read a lot of them, because as much as I like Star Wars and Star Trek, I don't need to read all the novels. But I read Outlander at a fairly impressionable age, and it made me want to learn more about history. It sort of gave me a push to do more research. And it's one of those books that I will go back and reread, despite the fact that it is thick. I own it 2 times over, once in all of my mom's hardcovers and oversized paperbacks, and once in mass market, which are the books that I do loan out. It is a very well written series that you learn more. I think I learned more about history from this series than I did in any of my history classes in high school. The 4th book is also the only book that I can say is my favorite book of all time, and that's American Gods. And what Neil Gaiman did with this book as a love letter to weird Americana, and, well, number one, has inspired me to want to take an American Gods road trip, because that's the thing. But it also kind of pushed my belief in being able to mix mythology into books without it being super obtrusive. And some of his works, you know, retelling Snow White as a vampire, like, who does that? His ability to twist the English language is something I aspire to. The last book is the book that has changed my writing for the better. As you all know, I am a romance writer, and sometimes learning the beats of a romance story are a lot harder than learning the beats of, like, a fantasy novel. Because for fantasy novels, everybody knows about the hero's journey. What I didn't know for romance novels is it has its own beat pattern, and a lot of well-written romance novels follow it. So Romancing the Beat actually paces that out for you and says, okay, in this section, these are the beats that you need. The only problem I have is I am an underwriter. I will write to the beat, which means that at 40,000 words, my book is usually done, and I have to go back and figure out what other things I need to put into it. I did put up this week a Medium post that had 5 other books or series that have inspired me both as a reader and a writer. And those being, like, the Wizard of Oz series. Twin of Fire and Twin of Ice, those were my first romance novels. And also kind of had this really interesting, they were run at the same time, so you could read them in either order and still get the same story, just told from the other twins' perspective. Emily of New Moon. Emily will always be superior to Anne of Green Gables because Emily's a writer, and she talks about these flashes of inspiration she gets, and it's always kind of stuck in my head, and occasionally I'm like, there's that moment. Iron King, it reignited my love of fae books, which, if you saw the one section of my bookcase, it is nothing but Holly Black and Julie Kagawa books. Then The Emotional Thesaurus. Well, actually, most of those thesaurus books in that series, because those have actually helped me figure out what all I can put in instead of, oh, she's embarrassed, let's make her blush, even though I do very much overuse that trope. So those are the books that have sort of shaped me as both a reader and a writer. Do you have any books that have helped you that are your favorites because they opened up a new world for you? If so, let me know below. And don't forget to feed the algorithm, boop that like button, and subscribe, and I will see you